Is Clyde Phillips secretly erasing Dexter? Or is that just the fatal myth fans keep repeating? Because the moment he returned to the franchise, something strange started happening. Entire seasons, whole characters, major villains, emotional arcs began disappearing like they were taped to the bottom of one of Dexter's kill tables. And while everyone celebrates his revival of the glory era, almost nobody wants to admit the cost of that resurrection. Half the canon is being buried alive. Think about it. Seasons 1 through 4 are treated like sacred scripture, referenced, quoted, honored. But seasons 5 through 8, they get talked about the way families talk about estranged relatives, politely, briefly, and only when absolutely unavoidable. Hannah dies off screen. Vogel never existed. The brain surgeon, the killer who shaped Dexter more than almost anyone, isn't even given a passing mention. It's selective history, and it's happening in plain sight. And the real question isn't whether Clyde Phillips is doing it. The real question is why, and what it means for the future of Dexter's story. Because if the revival keeps rewriting the past, then the franchise isn't evolving, it's amputating. And sooner or later, even a show about a serial killer can't survive that kind of self-surgery. Clyde Phillips has become a strangely polarizing figure in the ever-expanding Dexter afterlife, largely because he seems determined to conduct a personal archaeological dig through the franchise while pretending seasons 5 through 8 were, at best, someone else's crime scene. His return to the universe with new blood and resurrection was hailed as the prodigal showrunner finally coming home, but there is an unmistakable air of selective memory at work. References to the back half of the original series appear only when absolutely required, as if dragged into the daylight against their will, while seasons 1 through 4 are showered with nostalgic affection, like cherished children who grew up to become doctors. Seasons 5 through 8, the family relatives whose names one pretends to forget at Thanksgiving. The result is a revival era that treats entire years of storytelling as optional reading. Hannah appears, not because the show wants her, but because Harrison exists. Deborah is present because she died. Beyond that, the later seasons vanish into a void of polite disinterest. The creators seem almost allergic to acknowledging Hannah's very abrupt off-screen death, or the disappearance of Dr. Vogel, a character who once attempted to redefine Dexter's entire psychiatric mythology. The brain surgeon, arguably the killer who changed Dexter's trajectory more dramatically than anyone since Trinity, is now treated as if he were an urban legend. Even Lumen receives more affection in fan conversations than in any contemporary script. All of this selective amnesia might be defensible if it weren't so obvious that the first 4 seasons receive loving nods, while seasons 5 through 8 are left in the basement with the boxes marked MISC. Ironically, the revival occasionally remembers those forgotten years only long enough to gesture vaguely at them. Harry name-drops Lumen. Dexter makes a comment implying the existence of 2 mothers in Harrison's life. But these crumbs only highlight the larger attitude. The revival wants to present itself as a dignified continuation of early Dexter, while treating everything after Trinity as an accident it would rather not revisit. And yet, no matter how many viewers wince at the memory of later season decisions, they are still canon. Canon 1 simply wishes the show would stop leaving out at family reunions. This reluctance to engage with the full history seems tied to a common lament. Phillips should never have left the original series. Had he stayed, the argument goes, seasons 5 through 8 might have become something more coherent, perhaps even prestigious. Maybe Deb would not have fallen in love with her adopted brother. Maybe the Bay Harbor Butcher arc would have been saved for the end. Maybe the show would not have ended with Dexter fleeing into exile to become Lumber's answer to Bigfoot. But the revisionist dream of what if Clyde had stayed has become a substitute mythology, more vivid in the collective memory than anything that actually aired. Phillips's selective approach becomes even more interesting when contrasted with the way fans think about the different modern iterations of Dexter. Original Sin, the prequel series that managed to earn both comfort show affection and premature cancellation, provided glimpses of a Miami that felt warmer, more procedural, more forensics focused. Resurrection, by contrast, pushes suspense and dread, trading comfort for adrenaline. They serve different appetites, one a nostalgic appetizer, the other the main course. The frustration, then, isn't that Phillips favors one over the other. It's that he seems ready to abandon the entire pantry of late-season ingredients rather than risk tasting them again. The cancellation of Original Sin only deepened the sense of a franchise being jerked around by corporate whims. The same studio eager to greenlight a Trinity prequel, an idea so transparently mercenary it practically arrived with a coupon attached, abandoned its more compelling project, while still gesturing vaguely toward continuing Resurrection. Fans are expected to be comforted by Phillips announcing plans that will never see the light of day. Unused story arcs, hypothetical returns for Dokes, phantom seasons. Online petitions beg for resuscitation, but their track record is about as inspiring as Dexter's parenting. For all the noise, no corporation in entertainment history has changed course because someone shouted at them from behind a keyboard. Even the fan fantasies of how to salvage Original Sin betray the same problem that haunts Resurrection. Half the audience never saw the prequel. Dropping multi-episode flashbacks into an already dense story simply to service a cancelled series makes about as much network sense as resurrecting Trinity for a second time. And yet the desire persists, because Dexter's universe has become a patchwork quilt of what-ifs, almosts, cancellations, and unfinished arcs. Underneath all this speculation lies a more foundational anxiety. What would Dexter have looked like had the original series followed a more prestige television path? One carefully sketched reimagining proposes a tighter, 2-season conclusion after Season 4. In this alternate timeline, Season 5 begins as it originally did, but Deborah slowly pieces together the interwoven threads: the ice truck killer, Trinity, Lundy, Dokes, her own family history. This version reframes the entire story as Deborah walking the same psychological path that Dexter traveled in Season 1. Eventually, the truth becomes inescapable. The climactic moment arrives earlier in the series. Deb must choose between Dexter and another officer, perhaps LaGuerta, perhaps Quinn, and she chooses Dexter. The repercussions spiral. The FBI interrogates her. She breaks. She confesses everything. Dexter becomes a fugitive, turning Season 6 into a national manhunt and psychological horror. He disappears to another state, where his face eventually blankets every television in America. A cult of copycats emerges, a grotesque mirror of the real world. Over time, he surrenders, but only to Deb. The ending. Dexter on the execution table, surrounded by the ghosts of every life he ruined. This proposed ending inspired heated debate. For some, it is the only satisfying conclusion, a clear, uncompromising reckoning. For others, it is trite morality masquerading as drama. After all, Dexter is one of the few shows that dared invite viewers to sympathize with a serial killer. Ending with the symbolic, stern finger-wagging of "crime doesn't pay" feels too much like a network lecture. Still others argue that the original finale, Dexter choosing exile, was not inherently terrible, merely drowned in the incoherence of everything leading up to it. The divide is fundamental. Should Dexter die, be jailed, be executed, or walk free into the sunset? The only universal truth is that the franchise has spent more than a decade trying to patch over the chaos left by its original ending. The debate extends into micro-arguments, each one a miniature version of the broader dilemma. Some insist Dexter deserves a Scrub-style farewell, a hall of ghosts offering final closure. Others want justice in the electric chair sense, especially to mirror the scene where Harry showed Dexter an execution. Others recoil at the idea, dismissing it as simplistic punishment fantasy. Some prefer that he avoid capture entirely. Some think only Deb can bring him in. And a vocal minority still declares the happiest ending possible would be Dexter simply getting to live a quiet, unbothered life because the man has suffered enough, according to whatever moral calculus his defenders favor. In the meantime, the franchise continues to wrestle with the ghosts of its late season decisions. The Hannah storyline remains a flashpoint. For many, her presence undermined the entire code. Dexter had no logical reason to spare her. She fit the code's criteria neatly, and yet she became his romantic interest, not his victim. For others, Hannah's departure from the narrative, vanishing to Argentina only to die off-screen, was a narrative shrug unworthy of a central character. Vogel's introduction represented yet another retroactive rewrite of Dexter's origin story, diminishing Harry's narrative weight by replacing decades of paternal lore with a new psychiatrist pulling the strings. In a show already congested with secrets, conspiracies, and conveniently placed confidants, adding another character who knew everything all along pushed the believability threshold into parody. Season 5, ironically, receives both affection and disdain. For some viewers, it is the last truly functional season. For others, it is a misguided detour immediately after the series' peak. Critics of Season 5 point to its uneven acting, its thin plot, and its questionable decision to thrust a man freshly widowed into a relationship with a rape survivor who has barely begun processing her trauma. The implication that these two traumatized strangers should fall in love because they occupy the same tragic orbit remains one of the season's more confusing creative decisions. The self-help guru villain did not help matters, feeling more like a morality play caricature than a worthy successor to Trinity. Yet the season also dared to explore Dexter forming a deeper relationship with someone he could finally be honest with, an idea some viewers still argue had real dramatic value. For all its flaws, Season 5 continues to generate debate precisely because its ambition occasionally exceeded its execution. And then there is Clyde Phillips himself, occasionally stepping into the spotlight like a figure summoned by ritual. His AMA appearances, his podcast interviews, his enthusiastic self-assessment, all of these have become part of the larger narrative. His comments about being an amazing producer and writer by Season 4 prompted eye-rolling from those who have not forgotten that not every decision during that era was genius, and that some of his post-Dexter projects did not exactly revolutionize television. He helmed Feed the Beast, a show with an appealing premise and cast that still managed to collapse under its own weight. Nurse Jackie, another project with his fingerprints on it, hardly resembles the work of a flawless storyteller. Yet his defenders argue that Dexter brings out the best in him, that something about the franchise aligns perfectly with his creative instincts. Every writer has a natural habitat. Perhaps Dexter is his. Still, the revival hype machine has left some viewers wary. Promises that the Season 9 finale is the best thing he has ever written are met with both excitement and cautious skepticism. Many fans have been burned before, particularly by shows that deliver passionate speeches about how the upcoming ending will provide closure, redemption, fulfillment. Some have grown allergic to preseason declarations of brilliance, seeing them as a sign not of confidence, but of desperation. And yet, even the skeptics cannot deny the emotional weight of seeing familiar creative forces return. For some, the very fact that Phillips and company are attempting to tidy up the franchise's legacy feels like a victory in itself. Others feel bittersweet, knowing that many longtime fans did not live long enough to witness this final attempt at narrative restoration. The irony of this entire franchise discourse is that Dexter's early seasons, those golden years people cite endlessly, were not flawless either. Even Season 4, widely considered the crown jewel, contains moments of baffling stupidity from Dexter, narrative shortcuts, and contrivances designed to create suspense rather than coherence. Nostalgia has a way of blurring imperfections, polishing rough edges until they gleam with retrospective brilliance. The truth is more complex. The early seasons were compelling not because they were perfect, but because they balanced tension, character psychology, procedural intrigue, and thematic exploration with unusual clarity. That balance disappeared in later years. Whether Phillips can restore it now remains the open question. The franchise continues to grapple with how to treat characters like Lumen, Quinn, Batista, Dokes, and even the absent specter of LaGuardia. Some fans still crave Lumen's return, believing she represented a version of Dexter who was capable of genuine connection. Others feel the show became untenable once too many people discovered Dexter's true nature, turning the narrative into a bizarre, pseudo-family drama with serial murder as a bonding exercise. The incest-adjacent undertones of Deb's late series arc only intensified that discomfort. Meanwhile, some viewers remain furious that Dokes, arguably one of the most electrifying characters, was killed off so early. Phillips himself has acknowledged that conversations were had, but the story demanded a sacrifice, and Dokes was chosen. Whether that was a brilliant narrative decision, or a mistake that robbed the series of needed conflict, is another unresolved argument that resurfaces every few months. As for the Bay Harbor Butcher investigation, many fans still lament that the show squandered its most compelling long-term threat by resolving it too early. Saving that storyline for the end would have created the kind of monumental, inescapable tension that a series finale demands. Instead, the show stretched itself thin, with increasingly improbable twists and villains, until the final seasons collapse under their own mythology. The research behind Dexter's psychology remains one of the series' most surprising strengths, especially given how haphazard some of the plotting became. Psychologists, social workers, and professionals familiar with antisocial disorders have repeatedly noted that Dexter's behavior aligns more closely with clinical patterns than one might expect from a primetime drama. This foundation is part of what made the early seasons so gripping. Dexter's internal monologue felt both chilling and authentic. The later seasons, unfortunately, sometimes treated his psychology like a garnish rather than the main course. Phillips' return has revived the conversation about whether Dexter should ultimately be executed, imprisoned, redeemed, or freed. The execution ending remains polarizing. Some see it as poetic justice, others as the dullest possible conclusion. Supporters argue that Dexter finally facing the consequences of his actions would close the narrative loop. Critics counter that this is a show that built its identity on moral ambiguity, not moral arithmetic. A neat justice-served ending would betray the very premise that made Dexter unique. Yet the execution ending has undeniable dramatic appeal. Dexter returning to the execution chamber, mirroring the moment Harry once exposed him to lethal justice. Surrounded by ghosts of his victims, Dokes, Lundy, Rita, and countless others, it offers a haunting symmetry. It would be an ending with a period, not an ellipses. But the franchise has become a nesting doll of second, third, and fourth chances. Each new series attempts to fix the last. New Blood attempted to correct Season 8, Resurrection aims to correct New Blood, and somewhere beneath these layers lies the original desire for a final word. A definitive ending that does not require bandages, spin-offs, or retcons. One recurring theme is the belief that the franchise has simply gone on too long. The plot armor, once tolerable, has become absurd. Dexter escaping justice repeatedly becomes less a narrative choice and more a cosmic joke. And yet, the central premise remains addictive. The double life, the inner monologue, the cat and mouse tension, the dark passenger whispering in the background. No matter how many seasons stumble, the allure persists. The broader conversation surrounding the franchise also contains a fair amount of misplaced anger. Some argue that Phillips is unfairly criticized for not resurrecting characters he had no hand in creating. Fans who appreciated Hannah or Vogel naturally expected those characters to reappear. Fans who despised them applauded their omission. The confusion arises from treating Phillips as the creator of Dexter, rather than the showrunner for its earliest and strongest years. Expecting him to honor the mythology built by later showrunners is akin to asking a returning architect to defend the renovations performed after he quit the project. The truth is simpler. Phillips is restoring the version of Dexter he believes works. And whether one agrees with that vision depends entirely on which parts of the franchise one still holds dear. Some viewers maintain that seasons 5 and 6 retained value. Others believe the decline began at season 7 or season 8. Some insist Lumen deserves closure. Others insist she should remain in the narrative rearview mirror. Some despise the Hannah arc for betraying Dexter's code. Others enjoyed the chemistry between them. The only universal agreement is that the series became overburdened with people who knew Dexter's secret. The intimacy of the early seasons evaporated, replaced with a bizarre tapestry of confidants who turned the show into a serial killer support group. With Phillips now guiding the modern era, the hopes and fears of the fanbase collide. Some want closure, others want liberation, and the rest simply want competence. For all the complicated emotions swirling around this franchise, the expectations remain the same. Dark humor, psychological depth, moral ambiguity, and an ending that feels earned. The enthusiastic celebration of Phillips' return is tempered by a sober reminder. Nostalgia does not guarantee brilliance. Even the early seasons contain their share of questionable writing decisions. Loving seasons 1 through 4 does not mean pretending they were flawless. It means recognizing that, for all their imperfections, they captured something the later years lost: coherence, tension, intention. The fans who expressed sorrow for those who did not live to see the revived project reveal just how deeply Dexter remains embedded in the cultural consciousness. The show has disappointed viewers multiple times, yet the emotional investment persists. That attachment explains both the hope and the skepticism surrounding Phillips' latest work. When he claims the season 9 finale is the best episode he has ever written, he invites both anticipation and amusement. After all, confidence is expected. Humility is optional. The franchise continues to exist in a paradoxical state, simultaneously beloved and mistrusted. It inspires devotion even as it disappoints. It provokes fierce arguments about narrative justice, moral philosophy, and character psychology. It holds nostalgia hostage while teasing new beginnings. It resurrects possibilities even as it kills them off in boardrooms.